Alright guys, training has to keep on moving. Let's keep pushing. Um, nous finissons avec dishwasher. This is all done. If you have questions about it, uh, let me know. Now we're moving on to ice makers. This I can do because it's small. I can't really put dishwasher like that to show you guys. Um, okay. The first thing about ice makers, uh, it takes water. Wait till that water gets cold and turn into ice. It starts the harvest cycle. It loosens the ice. It scrapes the ice. It scrape and drop the ice and start a new cycle. Okay. There are different type of ice makers out there that are much more simpler and much more complicated at the same time. Um, but this is the most common, and this is what we need to understand. All right. It takes water, right? Before the ice maker can do anything, it has to have power. So right there is where you would put power into it, right? If you look very well into it, here it says V. I don't know if you can see it. It says V. You put your meter in there to test between L, um, to send power to the water valve. I don't recommend doing that because I run into trouble trying to do that, but that brings you to the water valve. What you can do is put 1 meter lead here where it says L, and 1 meter lead here where it says N. You should have 120. So right there you know that you have um, power coming to your ice maker. Okay, so it takes water. um, we have to send power to the water valve for it to take water, and then it waits till that water gets cold. So the way it does that, all right, here, this is a thermostat. I could probably take this apart to show you. Okay, this is a thermostat. What it does, it's waiting for about 12, 15 degrees on the ice maker. The ice maker itself does not produce any cooling. It just sits in the freezer and it uses the chill from the freezer to turn the water into ice. Water is more than 32 degrees Fahrenheit, right? So when the water comes in here, is going to when the water comes in here, right? Right inside of that mold, it will heat up that mold above freezing temperature, right? So this will see that because it's connected right in there. It will see that, and it will disconnect power going to the rest of the ice maker compartment. When it disconnects the power, the ice maker is not going to work. It's just going to sit there. So when that water sits there for about 2 3 hours, if the freezer is cold enough, okay, if it's not cold enough, you don't have an ice maker issue. You have more problems than that. If it's cold enough, then that will come from above freezing temperature to below freezing temperature. It will know that whatever water that was in there is now turned into ice. right? And then it will close the switch that's inside of there between this and that. It will close it, and then that will send power to this motor right there, right? And that motor will start the harvest cycle, right? It will start the harvest cycle. The, the motor, all it does is trying to spin this. It's trying to spin. It's trying to spin that. That's all the motor is doing. If you look closely, there's a gear here, okay, that is connected to the motor, and that gear is going to be connected to these fingers, right? So the motor is spinning those fingers, right? So what happens is ice acts like a glue. So these fingers will not be able to scrape that ice and drop it because it's stuck into the ice maker, into the mold. It's stuck in there. So what they do, they use a heater, okay? You touch this in the wrong time, it will burn you, right? They use a heater to melt the bottom of the ice a little bit to allow this finger to scrape the ice and drop it, right? So now when that heater comes on, you start to loose the ice, okay? So when that heater comes on, you are loosening the ice, giving the finger the ability to just scrape the ice and drop it, okay? So once that ice is loose, then you're going to see the finger keeps on rotating, rotating, and then it picks up the ice, and then it's going to drop it, and then it drops it into the bucket, okay? Once it drops it into the bucket, that module, we call it ice maker module, is because it's got pretty much the brain to make the ice maker running, okay? To make the ice maker run. So that motor is going to um, get to a point where it will close the switch that will send voltage to the water valve. Alright? And that's when we say take water again. So first we do the harvest cycle where the motor is spinning. After the motor spins, we take water. The water heats up the thermostat because it's above freezing temperature, and it will make the ice maker go into a waiting period when the water just sit there waiting to get cold. After the ice maker waits to get cold, we we restart the motor again to turn on the heater again, scrape the ice again, and drop it again and take water again. So that's it about ice maker. Now we have to really know how to troubleshoot it, right? So I'll go to an ice maker. The first thing I need to do is to take temperature of the freezer, okay? To make sure that the freezer has freezing has is cold enough for me to make ice. Okay. Generally, um, this is not the case because by the time you get the ice maker call, they are calling you for the ice cream that's not solid. They are calling you for other things, saying that the refrigerator is not cooling. So by the time you get to that problem, you run into other problems. But you don't overlook that. You always take a look to see if the refrigerator is cold enough. Second, you're gonna want to test inside of this. You want to find out what's inside of this. Does it have ice? Does it have water? Or does it have nothing at all? Okay. If it's got ice, we know, and the refrigerator is cold enough, we know that this part is bad, and although it's cold, it does not start the harvest cycle where the fingers start moving to drop the ice. Okay, so the ice just sits in there. Okay, if it's got ice, right, and it's just sitting there, what you're going to do, you're going to jump T and H. You're going to take a wire and you will jump them. What you are actually doing is closing those two switches. That's what you are actually doing. When you do that, you will do this guy's job for it, and it will start the harvest cycle. All right. When you do that, it will start the harvest cycle. When you start the harvest cycle, okay. So if you really look closely in here, I don't. You probably can't see it. If you look closely in here, it says low 32, L32, um, 17F. That really means that the power index gets disconnected when it's at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and it gets reconnected when it's at 17 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you have 15, 12 degrees, you're good to go. All right. So when you close that switch inside of there, the motor will start spinning. So you will see the arm starts moving, and then what you would notice, if it is the heater that is bad, it gets to this point and it doesn't move anymore. It doesn't pass it. Okay, what's happening is the ice that's inside of there is stuck, is glued to the body, to the mold, because the heater did not heat it up to get it loose. That's why we talk about loose the ice. The heater that did not loose the ice, so it cannot keep moving. It gets stuck here. Okay. Um, or what you can see between when you do CNH and that those fingers starts to move, you would see here there is a motor here and a gear, and there is a gear here. What you can see very often is that the motor right here is spinning, but the gear itself is not spinning. Sometimes you can hear it make a noise click, 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 click. That's because it keeps skipping. It doesn't, the motor and that doesn't spin because those teeth start to worn out, so it doesn't spin. So that's another reason. Um, let's keep moving. We have that. Okay, so we spoke about making sure the fingers are uh, uh, um, what we find inside of this. If you come and there is no water here, okay, if there is no water here, you're gonna want to do T and H again, okay, right in here, jump between C and H, and see what the ice maker does. If when it goes to the cycle where it has to take water, you will hear the water valve humming. If it hums, okay, and okay, this is water coming from the house. Okay, that goes to the back of the freezer and it goes in